We want her to think we're sophisticated book clubbers.
No, I always wonder, I'm like, how do y'all know so many books just like off the top of your head? So now I
Now you
understand.
know the behind the scenes.
Now I know.
We still don't know what happened at the end, guys.
You gotta go see a therapist immediately after that. That's a lot.
Noelle, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for picking this book. This was the perfect book club book. Welcome to Beyond the First Page podcast.
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, second pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And this is Club Meeting 33, Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Today we have our first ever fan, or second pager, we'll say, joining us, Noelle Heiser. Noelle, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for picking this book. This was the perfect book club book. Welcome to Beyond the First Page podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here as a fan representative, a second pager.
Yes. You were one of the OG
I was
second
going to say,
pagers,
well,
Noelle.
OG, but also just one of the only.
Stuck around, yeah.
Yes, very loyal, very loyal. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast, reading all the books, giving reviews, giving shout outs. You are truly a super fan, and we are so grateful for you. We want to break the ice with you a little bit. And actually, Noelle was the person who told me, because she is an avid book clubber, she's the one who told me about the icebreaker. And so we want to break the ice with you and ask you what book you think needs a sequel, or what book would you like to have a sequel. And I'll go first. This one's kind of a cop-out, but it's A Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. It's book 2 of the Kingkiller Chronicle. And this has been an unfinished trilogy for quite some time, but that's the sequel that I really want to see happen. And Phil, since you're throwing me so much shade, I'll kick it over to you.
No, I'm throwing you shade because that's what I was going to say.
Oh, it's such a cop-out, but it's so good.
It's such a cop-out.
I can come back to you.
Yeah, come back to me.
Isaac, what about you?
I'm going to say The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman. I was quoted on our first season saying I would read the second if it's there. So go check out that book from our podcast last season and then hit him up for a sequel.
Dang, interesting. Noelle?
A lot of good options for this, so many. I'm going to do a little bit of a throwback. Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I would love to see what that guy is up to his first year of college. How did he deal with everything? You know, maybe make a sequel to the movie too. Bring Emma Watson back. Would love to see that.
That's a good creative plug there, Noelle. We'll have to put that out into the universe. Phil?
So yeah, thank you, Phoebe. After yours, I would actually say this book doesn't deserve a sequel, but it was the third of a series. And this series I thought was going to be at least 5 books. And he basically builds up this entire, like, really intricate plot and then ends it all in half a book. And it's Wake the Dragon by Kevin J. Anderson. And I really do think that he was just told by his publisher, like, we only got a 3-book deal. And he was halfway through the 4th book and then just ended everything because it was so quick.
Wait, what was the name again, Phil?
It's Wake the Dragon, the series by Kevin J. Anderson.
Okay, I've never heard of it. Maybe I should read it, or it sounds like maybe not.
No, it's good. It's worth it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the most that I've ever read a book like Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I also want to say before we get started that this is a book club style podcast, if you haven't been clued into that yet. And we discuss major plot points and spoilers from throughout the book that we are discussing. And so if you don't want Martyr to be ruined for you, we really recommend that you read the book and then come on and listen to the podcast. And if you enjoy this podcast, please follow us on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are listening to the podcast, and give us a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. And now we will get into the book in 15 seconds. with Isaac.
I don't
Your
know.
friend Isaac.
I don't know if I can do it in 15. We'll see. So yeah, Martyr is about Cyrus, the main character, who is an Iranian American man. He was born in Iran after the Iranian Revolution and moves to America with his dad as an infant after his mother died in Flight 655, which was a commercial flight that was shot down by the United States Navy vessel. Cyrus grows up like pretty low class America. He goes off to college and his father dies and he becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict. And that's what he fills his life with. He gets sober eventually and then is looking to fill that void in his life that was previously drugs and alcohol with something, and is trying to write this book about martyrs. And he goes to Brooklyn, where a woman who is dying of terminal breast cancer is doing this art exhibit where she sits there and talks to people about death, and she's refusing all treatment for her cancer. He goes to Brooklyn, talks to her. She dies when he's there, and after her death, he finds out that that was actually his mom and she had never died in the plane crash.
Yeah. Noelle also was so prepared for this discussion. She sent notes ahead of time. And I think, Noelle, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but one of your notes kind of was like, he was a bit insufferable. That was my take. Okay. And he was like, the woe is me factor was really there for Cyrus. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, but you're thinking a little bit to yourself, like, why is this dude so sad all the time? And that's not how depression works, but that's where your mind goes, And so I wanted to say, like, I think he had a pretty decent upbringing. I mean, he had a dad who loved him. You don't think so, Isaac?
No. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where his dad had to work 6 days a week to feed him.
Yeah. So you didn't think he was insufferable as a character?
Oh, yeah, I did. But I don't think he had like an easy life.
Yeah. No, I don't think
he was insufferable about his past life. If anything, I thought he was kinder about his upbringing than perhaps, as Isaac is saying, he needed to be. I think he was more insufferable about his current life, and
which he did
as someone who, addiction is really difficult as like a third party, because it is so much like, what are you doing to yourself? And that it's hard to have sympathy for it, but it is a disease.
I think the part that I thought where he was kind of full of himself and like insufferable had less to do with like his past and nothing to do with his addiction. And it was more of these like day-to-day actions, like the things that he was saying to Z, or like his inability to like physically take care of himself by cleanliness, grooming, the way he would like interact with the people around him. I was just like, okay, you have so much self-importance, and everything that you do is just about yourself from your own point of view, and all you can think about is your own point of view. But I don't think that he believes that. And that's why he was insufferable to me. It's because he was just so self-important, and that just like drove me nuts. But I definitely think he had a rough upbringing, and like recognize all of the intersectionality between like the class and the race and sexuality and everything that he was dealing with, addiction, all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I said like came on a little strong about saying, like you were saying, Noelle, he had a lot of different things that were making him different and making it hard to be a man growing up in America. I thought there was a really good quote, maybe capturing a little bit of what you're talking about, Noelle. There was nothing in his life that wasn't contaminated by what he mostly mindlessly called light capitalism. He hated it like everyone was supposed to, but it was a hate that made nothing happen. He wanted to be on the right side of history, whatever that was. But more than that, he admitted this to himself when he was practicing being rigorously honest. He wanted other people to perceive him as someone who cared about being on the right side of history. Mm-hmm. He wanted to be seen this certain way because he was so obsessed with his self-image kind of thing, which made him insufferable.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that Orkita and Cyrus are so similar in who they are. I think that they both have that same type of self-importance. Like Orkita, literally, escaping the Iranian Revolution, absolutely tons of trauma.
Wild.
Like, don't
Yeah.
blame that part of it. But like this whole death speak exhibit, like artistic, cool, interesting, different, but like you can't not say that's not self-important in its own sense, in a similar
Right.
way that Cyrus is trying to write a book of poems about martyrdom. I find them to be
Yeah.
two sides of the same coin, honestly.
Yeah.
I agree with you,
Completely.
Noelle, but I think that the Orchida character is like she salvages her selfishness, I guess, because she has actually ended up creating the art. So she is sharing that with other people. Where I think that we are led to believe that Cyrus, and again, this maybe can lead us to the ending because I also have no idea what happened. But there, in the chapters, there are, or before the chapters, there are quotes from his alleged work.
Book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he presumably has created something, but he's living this life that he can only think about himself, can only think about how he wants to have a life that matters and that will make his death matter. And then Z does call him out on his bullshit at the end before they get into this big fight because he's like, you're talking about all this, but you're not doing anything about it. The only thing you have ever done is become addicted to drugs and then kicked it. And you can't be talking the way you are, and that is only your life contribution to the world. Whereas at least Orchida has created all this art. I also think, did a lot of selfish things, but at least she was creating this art that she was sharing with the world. Whereas Cyrus, I found, was just wallowing and pontificating in his own mind and to his friends at his coffee shop, doing nothing about it. And I think that's where they kind of agree, two sides of the same coin, but where they differentiate, where Orchida's did matter.
You're being able to see
there's
her
time.
art.
Yeah, there's time in between that coin. Like he's young
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
and she's
Right.
old and has succeeded in her endeavor. Let's, we either need a sequel to see like does his art come out, or we need a prequel to see her at the beginning. And like that's kind of how I see that.
I think we got her at the beginning, though. Like, that's what I liked about the
bit.
characters, where we do get a sense of who they were before current time. I think Noelle predicted it. I, as you guys know, read like an idiot, so I don't think about anything besides what I'm currently reading. So I did not see her as the mother at all.
No, I think Noelle thought that,
which
I
Layla.
thought this too.
Or
Yeah,
that's
I
what
thought
I
the same
thought,
thing.
too.
I
I thought
thought
that's
she was the
Layla.
lover.
That's
yes.
what I thought too.
The
Because I was
lover.
like, no way is it going to be her the mom.
Yeah,
You know?
I thought it was
It's
Layla
too
the
obvious.
whole time.
Yeah. Well, we've been beating around the bush. What do we think? Like, what happened at the end, guys? That's the big
I think we should
question.
talk plot.
This was the lead up to the big thing.
I have no idea. Like,
I've read a
I can't
couple
even
theories
begin
online.
to guess.
I didn't read anything online. I'm pure.
I feel like my only kind of guess is that he relapsed and him and Z have this weird trip, and then the book ends.
That's what I thought it was. I actually
That's
didn't
what I
read
thought.
too much into it. But I wasn't actually that intrigued until Maria, my wife, was like, hey, how did you think it ended? And then I was like, he was just on an acid trip. And then I looked it up, and people thought that he died before, like a while at the hotel, he OD'd after his argument with Z. Which, I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't think that.
I don't think I've liked the book enough to give it that much credit. That's my problem. I think that I just like that's so good that
Noelle,
this
is what happens when you come on the podcast.
That just like doesn't square with my my reckoning of like how good this author is. Like, I just don't think he could have pulled that off. I think that is phenomenal, but I don't think
I disagree with you, Phil. I don't know. Like, there was definitely times, and we didn't really get into the writing too much, but there was definitely times where I thought that the use of figurative language confused the point. Like, he was overdoing it with figurative language. I have a quote here that I'll read, and maybe you guys could tell me what this means. This is from Roya, who was also Orchida. and Cyrus's mother. I never really loved being alive. It's hard to get there without some sort of distance, hard to describe the shape of a cloud from inside the cloud. Like how I could appreciate gravity more if I'd had trouble floating off in my teens, and what I could sneak away from myself felt notable only in contrast to that baseline of selflessness. I was like, I don't know what she's trying to say here.
Here's my issue.
It's beautiful, but it doesn't make sense.
Here's my issue with the writing. I think that it was so hard for me to abstract, to separate the author from Cyrus, from the mother, because all of it was reading like the Cyrus poems in the initial chapter. And that's what I had a problem with. I thought that like, if he was just writing from Cyrus's point of view, sort of like that, where he's an alphabet, like a life is a finite set of shapes. With it, one can produce almost anything. I think that one's fine. But then you're right, Phoebe. You read that from the mother's point of view, and you're just like, why is everyone talking like this? Like, why is this all poetry?
I think there's something to be said about personal taste in this situation too. I like poetry. I enjoy writing that's a little bit extra for no reason. I feel like it's like a lot of jello in your mouth at one time when you're trying to read this book through. Because you're right, like when you pull it out, these nuggets are really good, but when you consume it all at once, I can see how it can definitely be too much. However, I enjoy this style of writing. Like I really, really like when something is like a little bit ridiculous, kind of sticky, beautiful. Like I like that kind of vibe. Ocean Vuong is another one of my favorite authors. Like I enjoy that. I'm also curious if this author, if English is a second language, because you tend to, I don't know, like I would have to research this, but you think about like Water for Chocolate. Books like that are also written like this, and there's like a very poetic, extra, a lot of analogies and similes and like just kind of extra language in there. You see that a lot with like Spanish to English, those kind of translations. So I'm curious if English is a second language for this author. Yeah, no, I love the writing and I like poetry quite a bit. And I also thought that the poetry that Cyrus wrote, the little like Doc X things from his supposed book, that poetry, like I actually didn't think it was very good. I thought that sometimes it was good. I thought most of the time it was actually quite bad. And I thought that was really intentional. And then you would go into the writing and you're like, okay, maybe from especially Cyrus, from his point of view, there's nuggets in there, buddy. Like you can do this. You could be a poet. Like that's how I felt, but you're not refined. You're not good at executing. It yet. But I do hear your point on every character having that same type of voice. Yeah, same tone. I definitely hear that. I think that's a good critique of the writing.
Yeah, that's a great point about English as a second language. It
is
looks
second
like
language, or
second
or third.
That I would never think
written
that.
In English. It wasn't a translation, right?
No, but is that the author's second language?
His first language is Farsi, then Arabic, then English.
No, I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, it's like a Russian to English translation. It's like it can be dry.
Straight, like shot it in the head. Boom.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? Noelle hates Russian literature.
I can't stand it. Yeah.
Phil loves it, so we see the dueling hats here. I thought the writing of sobriety and depression, like I don't have depression, but I think if I was a depressed person or if I had an addiction, I think I would feel so seen by this author. I mean, he was addicted to alcohol and had struggled with addiction. I think like him saying he wanted to set himself on fire, the whole like coffee cup scenario where he like bought the coffee, then he couldn't decide about the coffee. I was like, what is the like, but that was his life, that he was struggling with all of that. And I thought the writing was so realistic about his thoughts and interactions, I felt, from a person from perspective who has not experienced that.
So I loved the coffee scene. I think it was my first or second favorite kind of segment of the book. And so I don't want to have a critique on the writing. I think where Phil's problem to me is a character problem, where all the characters are that way. not a necessarily writing problem. And I think maybe that's what you were saying.
But I don't think Z is like that. That's where I thought it
I
was a
think they're
writing
all
problem.
like that. Okay.
I don't think
I
Z,
found
Z
them
was
to
a
be all
bartender
like
that
that.
seemed very down to earth, taking care of people, did not seem, but he wrote
But we only
like
had
that.
one chapter from Z's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it one? It was
Yeah.
like one chapter. So like you really can't say like how he wrote Z because it was just really one chapter.
I think
Yeah.
anyone that could love or put up with Cyrus is going to be a little bit like Cyrus.
That's
Regardless, I thought
Fair.
I have a hard time just as far as like critiquing or analyzing goes, connecting with characters who are written as if they know they are the main character. Like they're going through life as if they know we're reading about them.
true.
And I thought the only two times that
That's
I
funny.
didn't get that vibe is the coffee scene, because I can guarantee you we have all done something like that. We're going, we have this like running through our minds in like 5 seconds, every single scenario of what, as if we were the like spotlight of the earth was on us, and every single person in the world was analyzing what we were doing with these 2 coffee cups. Whatever that scenario is in your real life has happened to all of us, I can promise you. And then the second one was the conversation that when he calls his uncle, and that the flowery language kind of went away. The uncle is like this PTSD Iranian war veteran, and he just they just have a much more normal conversation. Again, it gets a little flowery at the end when he talks about the devil giggling with the cassette and stuff, but up to that point, even when he's talking about the CD, it's just being like, you don't understand, like Cyrus, and he's essentially, I got from that, he's like, Cyrus, your life has been difficult, but like my life was a piece of shit too, and you didn't have to look at all these dead bodies. Like, get yourself together, man.
Yeah.
So those were the 2 things I liked the most, and I think again, like I said, I had the character as the main, knowing they're the main character is what I kind of viewed this writing as.
Can we do a circle back on a character?
Yes.
Can we talk about the uncle? Arash is his name? Arash?
Yes.
That was mind blowing. You know how much
Wild.
I Googled to try to find a picture of this? I did it the first time I read the book. And then when I re listened to it for this podcast, I was Googling like a mad woman, trying to find like an imagery of what he would
was doing
on
his job.
the horse. Yeah. The angel of
Yeah.
death or whatever it is. I wanted more of him.
Wild.
That's who I wanted more
Yeah.
of his stories. Yeah. That was interesting.
It was so wild, the fact that they were employing people to do that because killing yourself was such a sin in their religion. Yeah, truly wild. Yeah, and you didn't really get, all you got was that nugget. He was the connector to his mom, but you didn't really get any backstory. I would agree. I thought that was wild. And yeah, did you find a picture, Noelle? Like, did you find any information about it?
Couldn't.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, so I read this book initially for my local book club that I go in person to here in Ballard. Shout out Ballard Book Club. Y'all are great. And we had to get that in there. But we all, like, it was like collective. Like, we were like, yeah, we all Googled it and we all found nothing. So
was it real? Like, is that a real thing?
So online I did find that I think it is like real, maybe not to the extent. I have no idea, but I think it is real in some context. But no pictures. Couldn't find any pictures. No paintings. I couldn't find any. Which I'm wondering, like, is that like you're not allowed to photograph or depict that specific thing? I just don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was wild. We still don't know what happened at the end, guys.
We just were like, nah, we're done.
I guess like what do you guys think happened at the end, or what was either what did you get out of it, or what was the author's intent to get out of it? I didn't really think about it that much until I was sort of putting my notes into the document to reference for this. And then I got it took me like 2 hours to do this because I'm like sitting there having to think way more than I did when I was actually reading it. So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think the message is.
I mean, I accepted this invitation for one of you to tell me what the ending meant because I don't have a clue.
I'll tell you what I think. You guys can tell me if it's crazy. And I didn't get this after reading it. This was after my 2-hour note, taking and looking back on. I think the point of this book is a story of human selfishness and the fight against it that every single person is going to lose. And that's what a martyr is. Someone who is fighting, like loses a fight, but for a good cause. So if you are fighting the natural inclination of human selfishness, you're not going to win, but you are going to do some good along the way. There's a quote that his sponsor says, "There's no difference to the outside world between a good guy and a bad guy behaving like a good guy. In fact, I think God loves the second guy a little more." So
I did.
that's what I think the book is
That's a good
about.
one.
I like that takeaway.
Yeah.
That's
too.
not what I got out of the book, but I really like that takeaway. Very well researched, Isaac, with your points. I like that.
Thank you. It took me a long time to get there.
I think my takeaway, Isaac, was really similar to yours. Kind of what you were saying, just maybe a little bit different. It's all focused on death and making your death mean something. But I think throughout the book, you glean that every day that you're living is and what you do at that time, that you're around people and that you're interacting with people and you're doing things, the choices that you make, what you choose to interact with, like from like capitalistic perspective, those are the things that matter, and that's what makes a martyr, is what you do before the death. So like
I
this whole
agree.
period of living means so much more than this fixated point that Cyrus is so fixated on, which is this moment of death and what makes a martyr, that he had learned, if he had survived his acid trip, that he would have learned that this period is far more important because it makes this important.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that I agree with that completely. And I think that like his main point is that Cyrus realizes, or maybe doesn't, but the reader realizes through this story, that Cyrus's fixation on death has made his life so not worthwhile to anything. And he's just missed, like he develops this idea of that. I like the separation between earth martyr, people who die for other people or a good cause, and people who die for the afterlife, which is like the death martyr. And he's trying to just he has no idea like what even it means to make a death important. And so like while he's missing this, and Orchide tells him, you want to be an earth martyr, and he's like missed that, and she's missed that because she's sort of run away with everybody in her life except for these last 2 weeks where she's trying to sort of, I think she's trying to tell people that. And I think that that is like this entire point of her doing the art, is she's realized, I have abandoned everybody in my life, and I have like sort of messed this whole thing up a little bit, and I can die, I can make my death for other people by sharing this very important thing that I learned. And that's what I think the point is. That said, I don't think he successfully makes that point.
He is in Cyrus, or he is in Akbar?
He is in the author.
Okay.
Yeah.
Akbar.
And maybe I'm not giving the author enough credit, but I do think that point could have been made more clear if that was his point.
I mean, if he would have changed the ending and made the ending something salient and like, or just tangible, instead of it trying to be this like trippy weirdness, I think that the point would have been there.
I think so
But-
too.
But
I
then
think
would that have
it
been
would've-
too on the nose? Would it
I
have
don't think. I think he
ruined
missed the face.
Yeah.
I don't think so, considering the rest of the book wasn't on the nose at all. Like you had
Yeah,
to read
that's
between
what
the
I
lines
think.
to
I mean, though,
understand
like,
it. Yeah.
Oh,
If
like
it-
he
Oh, I
was
see.
delivering
it-
something
he
different
just-
at the end.
It ends and just
Maybe.
does like, and this is what it is. Does that kind of defeat the point? Like, I kind of think that I was in this whole like art space. Like, if you look at this book, less of a book and more of like a piece of art, it does become a little bit choose your own adventure, or like force you to read it between the lines. Like, you got to work for it a little bit. And maybe I'm trying to give him a lot of credit. but that could be it. I don't know.
I don't think you are giving him too much credit because I didn't get martyrdom at all from this book.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's the problem. Because I don't think that
we listen and we don't judge, Phil, because I have my own opinion.
Think that's what I don't like about some of these books where...
Let me just read you a quote. So my perspective was that it was about art, and this was an exploration on art for me. It was just thinking about, like, Isaac going back to people have it, you know, that Roya was so obsessed with art that really nothing else mattered in the end to her. This is the quote. I am an artist. I give my life to art. That's all there is. People in my life have come and gone and come and gone. Mostly they've gone. I give my life to art because it stays. I am an artist. I make art. She paused for a moment. It's what time doesn't ruin. And I think it was just like Cyrus was trying to be an artist. She was an artist. It was about art. And then this book was a form of art. I think at the end, it was a very much like you're looking at a painting, you're trying to figure out what the heck happened. And it's a choose your own adventure because it's art and it's up to the reader's interpretation. So I felt like it wasn't, to me, it was not about martyrdom. I wasn't thinking about martyrs because I do agree that the point maybe wasn't made too effectively. And so therefore I picked a different avenue, and I thought it was cool that it was just this like kind of wonky piece of art that we got to enjoy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I see that, Phoebe. I guess my point is that what was he doing for the entire book then? Like, why was the entire book about martyrs if the book wasn't about martyrs? Like,
see, I think it was. I mean, Phoebe, what do you think of as a martyr?
Yeah, I've never thought about
how would you describe a martyr?
Someone who dies for a righteous cause.
Yeah.
I've never thought of a martyr like that. I've always thought about a martyr as a more effective use of your life as a death. It's something that people can rally behind. I've never ever. Maybe I just don't know the definition of what a martyr is, but I think of a martyr as
the same thing.
I think that is so. In college, I took a class. It was at the Air Force Academy, so very military college, but it was the sociology of violence and war. Very cool, taught by a Vietnam War vet. Like, it was sick. It was a really cool class. But we went into this entire understanding of like a terrorist, right? Like, you three conceptually understand that a terrorist doesn't have to be someone that's Islamic, right? We all conceptually understand that. But he started the whole class talking about terrorism as, you know, what it actually is, the definition. And we looked at the conflict between Ireland and England as the examples, right? And I think what you're saying, Phil, kind of feels similar. You might, correct me if I'm wrong, be understanding or thinking of martyrdom in a more like a political or like an actionable sense, whereas Phoebes, you're thinking it more of like ideologically, and like there's a little bit of a separation there. I see it as an ideological thing, and I think that was the intent of this book. He was trying to understand how to make it an action, like what is an actionable or like a charged martyr? How do I be a martyr? But the point of a martyr is, how do you live? And I think that's why it was titled Martyr. And that's like the whole point here is like a martyr it's not a, yes, it's a noun, but it's like, it's the accumulation of actions before that death. And it's not just your body
really,
dying.
Really smart.
Yeah.
That's really well explained.
Noelle.
I could just die now.
Yeah.
Phil said I was smart.
No, I think that's really genius. I think to be a martyr, you're right. Like that, I was thinking of it as the last choice, but the lead up to that, like if I'm like, screw capitalism and kill myself, I'm not a martyr. So it's not the death, it's the life that makes it. It needs the death for sure, because just definitionally. Yeah. But you're right. I think the more important part is, and that's where I think, that's a really, really good point, where Cyrus couldn't have been a martyr, actually. Because he didn't die for shit. So if he died on this acid trip, he was not a martyr.
Even if he like taped a martyr to his chest, he's not a martyr.
I don't think he died. I don't think he is not a martyr if he died. I don't think he's a martyr because he didn't do anything. I'm saying he didn't. I'm saying if he died now, if he died at the end of the book, he's not a martyr.
If he,
Yeah.
what I'm saying is he could become a martyr if he kept living and changed
Yes.
his ways and then
And
died
do.
later.
Mhm.
But as of now, his time ends, not a martyr. Is she a martyr?
No.
Por qué no?
Yeah.
I think she is. And this
I
is
think
where
she
the
is as
art
well.
thing comes in. But it's not, the book is not about art. That was just her vehicle of martyrdom.
I
And
think
that's
so as
what your
well.
quote defends,
saying.
Phoebe.
I felt the opposite, but
Yeah.
tomato,
Okay.
tomato,
Well,
I
I don't know
guess.
how to convince you of that.
Phoebe's done this a lot where she's just like, the emperor has no clothes. I think it means this. It's just like, what do you mean?
No, I see. Like, it's definitely about martyrdom. Obviously, the name of the book is Martyr. Like,
Yeah,
I can't dispute that.
And I think Noelle said it like very, very well, much better than I would have. But I asked you guys that because I kind of thought, I think of martyrs, and maybe like definitionally they have to die, but I don't think you necessarily do have to die. But I think it's like a continual sacrifice for something. And she has a quote. Again, it's about art, so I don't want to say it because it's going to confuse you to my point, I think. But it's like this giving up of everything for something.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so she was a martyr for art.
To her, she was, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I buy that.
Was she a martyr for her
Yeah,
way of life? She gave Layla her
True.
thing, left her husband and infant. Was she a martyr for freedom, like women having rights and women having freedom, being allowed to love who you want? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think was Layla a
She made
martyr?
a lot of sacrifices.
I don't know.
True.
I think it's really hard to define because I think that if you were to ask me to name my top 5 favorite martyrs, it's going to be different than all of us are going to have a different opinion.
I couldn't name 5 martyrs, I don't think.
I think there has to be.
Calling me out, I couldn't either. However, maybe 2.
I know, like Mother Teresa.
Joan
like,
of
that's
Arc.
like the
Yeah.
martyr.
Joan of Arc. Yeah.
I think that you're. Here's where this is definitely just a cost for opinion, but to me, a martyr, yes, the life has to mean something, but I do think, I guess I disagree with you, Isaac. I do think the death is important. Or maybe the final act. Maybe it doesn't have to be a death, but it could be a reclusion from life. So you could be a martyr by winning all of the football things and then retiring from football at age 24. Because you're like, this is not like, you want to see my greatness, but I do not want you to continue.
So sorry, I didn't want to bring this up because of just how controversial it is, but Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, I think he is
a martyr.
Yes, because he
declined.
So it's not
definition.
Yeah. So it's not but it is a definite, like, there's not a death, but it is a death of type.
It was a death of his career.
And that's why, and I think the death has to be intentional for the cause. And for that reason, Layla was not a martyr. Yeah. She died on a freak accident in a plane.
And I think that's what Cyrus struggles with the whole time. Like, all these people died. His mom died for no reason.
Yeah.
No, I was just answering Noelle's question.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I agree with you, Phil. I don't think Layla would be a martyr, but I do think Orkita, in that using that exact same rationale, would be considered a martyr.
Right. Yes.
Even before she actually does death speak and dies.
I think so as well, because she left life.
Everything.
She left. She died. She died as a she did die. Roya is a martyr for that way of life. Orkita may be a martyr for art.
Okay.
Yeah.
We really brought it full circle at the end
really
here.
Did.
I was like, what is this discussion? But I think it ended on I think we mic drop on that. That was good, you guys. Good. I think you convinced me too about, like, it's not about art. It was about martyr. I think figuring out who is the martyr, that was important. I also think the very, like, interesting quotes about the plane crash. We did not talk about that at all. I did not know about that being shot down.
Yeah.
Really crazy, and like the neglect of both governments, just really crazy and sickening and sad. And
how long was
interesting.
This book? How many pages?
331. Yeah.
And maybe this is where, like, our sequel discussion comes in. I just think this book bit off so much. And so I think my rating was a 2. And I think
Oof.
that it was so much that it needed to be taken piecemeal like we're doing now. But without this, you couldn't. So maybe it's like a 2 unless you read it over a semester for a course. And then it's a 4 or 5 because there's so much there, but I don't think any of it was executed successfully without this in-depth conversation. And we could have had this about a bunch of different points. We didn't talk about the whole political thing.
I think for that reason, I actually did not give it a rating until I had this conversation because I physically felt I could not rate it. And now having it, I'm going to go a 4. The conversation really brought it for me. And I think that, like, again, kudos to our fan, Noelle, because this was such a good pick for a book club. And
It was
I
a
think
great book club book,
like,
for
yeah,
sure.
just absolutely fabulous. And I really enjoyed the discussion. And I really did enjoy the book. And I think it made me think about a lot of things. And I think, yeah, it was a 4 for me. Isaac, what about you?
So I want to go on record, and the second book we read this year was Night Watch. I rated it a 3, and that was far too high for like just scaling in general.
That's what
so I'm
I
dropping that, and this is a 3.5. And I want to say that because I did really like this. This conversation was really good, but to what Phil says, was very necessary for me to get, I think, the full enjoyment from this book. So 3.5.
Noelle, what about you?
I obviously love this book. I think it's very tailored to my taste artistically as well. I love a book. Typically, I've been telling people actually recently that my favorite books right now are written by people that are like second gen immigrants that speak English as like a second and third language. I love the interaction with the English language in that sense, which is why I love flowery language. Um, it's a 5 for me. I love a book that's going to make me think. This whole discussion, I've been like sitting in it with my own thoughts, talking with other people. Any book that's going to bring forth a discussion like this to me is a 5-star book. I love books like this. And then the cherry on top to me was that it was so flowery and kind of unnecessary. However, I almost do
I
want
love
to
that you
take
love that.
I love it, yeah. And I stand by that. I do almost want to take off a half star at the end though, because that ending I hated. I wish that literally anything else. Like I sped through because I was like, I don't really care. Like this is unnecessary.
Stop this.
Yeah, so maybe a
Yeah.
4.5 because of that. But yeah.
Yeah. I think also I'd be curious to know, Noelle, what you would recommend to fans if they liked Martyr, something else that they might read that they would enjoy.
So there's so many aspects pulled from this. If you enjoyed the like the uncle and Arash and like understanding from an American context of, a war that, we just don't talk about so much, Girl at War is a really good one. If you enjoy the language and the poetic side and we didn't talk about it too much, but the intersectionality that the character Cyrus deals with being Iranian, but being from the Midwest, all that kind of stuff. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Noelle.
Mhm.
I'll have to add those both to my TBR because I always trust your opinion. Phil, over to you.
Yeah, if you liked the first 95%, I would say Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. If you liked the last 5%, I would say You Dreamed of Empires by Alvaro Enrique. That's the acid trip one. So that's the whole thing is an acid trip.
Isaac, what about you?
So I'm recommending Tuesdays with Maury. We're vetting books for the book club, and I didn't realize this
Isaac
was so
also
popular.
How are you
Noelle
going
was
to relate
like-
that to this book?
It's all about death and dying gracefully. I read these
is.
like simultaneously, and my God, I wouldn't
That's a
recommend
lot.
doing that.
You gotta go see a therapist immediately after that. That's a lot.
Yeah. So read them maybe with spaced out a little bit, but Tuesdays with Maury does just talk about living well and dying well.
Nice. Good rec, Isaac, for anyone who hasn't heard of Tuesdays with Maury. I'm recommending A Little Life, The Heart's Invisible Furies, or Cloud Cuckoo Land. Those are my 3 if you enjoyed Martyr. And before we go, I just want to thank Noelle again so much. You were an awesome guest. And since you will hopefully read the next book, we would love to tell you and all the other listeners what we are reading next. So that will be The Wager by David Grann. Isaac, would you just give us a quick summary of that?
Yep. The Wager is a story of an English warship that wrecks off the coast of Patagonia hunting a Spanish galleon. And the crew has to survive perilous conditions and questionable leadership. And then if they make it back to England, answer for the decisions and actions that they take.
Well done,
Awesome.
Isaac.
Thank you. And as always, this is your bi-weekly reminder to call someone that you love, tell them that you love them. For me, I don't have to because I had someone that I love on the podcast. Noelle, thank you so much for talking with us. It was truly a pleasure. I always love hearing your insights.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun chatting with you guys, and I feel very honored to have been part of this discussion and had great conversations. So thank you.
And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Noelle.
Let's go beyond the first page.